with Joshua. So we know that you're going to Princeton University
Yes,
in America,
yes,
which is an Ivy League school.
yes.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about your application process. Which universities did you apply to worldwide, and how did you go about that?
So worldwide, I mainly focused on three countries or areas: the USA, the UK, and Canada. And my mindset while applying was, okay, I need to look for schools that are actually able to afford me an opportunity to attend them. Because applying to a school I knew we weren't able to afford would have been nonsensical. So I looked for schools, I searched online, I checked every website I could for schools that could actually supply some sort of funding to their education. And so for the UK has an application portal called UCAS, where almost every university around the UK you are able to apply through that website. And it's a very simple process. All you need is to get your headmaster or counselor or somebody to write you sort of a letter or submit your testimonial. And then you just need to enter your IGCSE or A-level grades or any grades that you have really, and select your universities, pay a one-time £25 fee, and that's over with. Some universities may have an entrance exam. Like I applied to Oxford and I had to take an entrance exam. I had to go to GABS, take an entrance exam at a school, submit the results, and all of that. But otherwise, most of them don't, and it's a fairly simple process. In America, there's what we call the Common Application, Common App. If you just Google it, you'll see Common App, which is sort of like UCAS for the UK, but this time they require a bit more information, family information, extracurriculars, grades, everything of that nature. But after that, you're able to put any school you'd want, and you're also supposed to put some people who can recommend you, some teachers, some counselors. And after putting in information, all of the schools will want, each school will have their own individual questions, short essay questions or long essay questions, or special requirements they want you to submit. For example, Princeton, they had several short answer questions, longer essay, and they even asked me to submit a written paper, a paper that I've wrote and has been graded and commented by a teacher. So it is possible for some universities to have certain special requirements, but for the most part, it is quite easy. But for Canada, I only applied to the University of Toronto, and they have their own separate application just as a university. Although I do remember seeing an application portal for several schools around Canada, much the same like America and the UK. But yeah.
Okay, and what are the fees like, if you remember, to apply to these various universities, or what is the budget that somebody has to have in mind if they're going your route?
I'd say the cheapest was definitely the UK. It's just a one-time fee for all the five schools. You have a maximum of five schools per application you submit. So for all those five, you just pay £25. Then in America, each school will have its own separate fee as you submit the applications, and they were somewhere around $60 to $80. Although it is possible to email the school directly and ask for a fee waiver, and 8 times out of 10 or 9 times out of 10, they will actually be able to send you a code that you could enter, and you wouldn't have to pay the application at all. The most expensive, I'd say, was Canada, because there were a lot of fees. I think in total it was around, I want to say 500 to 800 Canadian dollars. So it is that was the most expensive one for sure. But I'm pretty sure for the Common Application in America, as long as you email the school, they will be able to send you a fee waiver, and it basically costs nothing.
That's awesome. And getting a full scholarship, how was that process?
It was very stressful because there's not that many opportunities available. So for the three countries I selected, in the UK, not many schools at all. In fact, the five I applied to were the only five I could actually see had some sort of funding for international students, because that's what it mainly comes to. They're able to provide funding for students native to that region. But when it comes to international students, it's a bit more scarce. So the ones I found were Oxford, Warwick, University College London, University of St. Andrews, and Manchester University. So the problem with these ones, however, is that on top of these highly selective schools already, I mean, they have very low admission rates. They have separate applications for the scholarship. So simply getting into the school is not a guarantee that you will get a scholarship. So because of that, the whole process is very competitive, especially for the UK. When it came to Canada, the reason I selected over Toronto was because I found a very interesting scholarship opportunity called the Lester B Scholarship Foundation, somewhere along those lines, where you basically ask your headmaster or any head at your school to submit an application on your behalf as a school, saying you're recommending this person for the scholarship. The school is only able to submit one person every year. So this person has to have leadership qualities and has to be at the top of that game academically. So once your school recommends that person, you'll be registered for that scholarship. And then after that, you have to apply to the school and you'll find out if you get the scholarship later the following year. The application opens around October and then results come in, I got in February, March, around there. Then when it comes to America, there's a lot more universities that are quite generous with their funding. However, these universities can be also quite selective. So America has a few systems. We have need-based colleges or need-blind colleges. So need-blind colleges will admit any student regardless of their ability to pay the school. So if you might not be able to afford the tuition, but if the school is registered as need blind, you can still apply to the school. And if you are accepted to the school will give you funding towards, and most of the time it's full funding. I know especially for the Ivy League colleges and some other colleges, like I applied to Princeton, they are able to secure full funding like I am on right now. Then we also have need-aware colleges. These are colleges that will consider your ability to pay the school in your application. But if you actually manage, despite your ability to pay, to get into the school, they will provide funding to secure your education within that university. So I definitely say in America, there were a lot more opportunities. But yeah.
That's awesome. And what does your scholarship or sponsorship entail? You did mention that they cover your tuition in full.
Yeah.
What else do they cover in terms of accommodation, living expenses?
Everything's fully covered. Full tuition, accommodation, food even. And most of the time, most schools will give you some sort of either monthly or semesterly allowance to just spend on anything you might need. Clothes, resources for school, devices you might need, stuff like that. So, but they're very generous with their funding.
That's awesome. And you did mention with regards to, I think it was the Lester B scholarship,
Yeah.
how your school has to recommend you and
Yeah.
they look at your academics as well as leadership potential.
Yeah.
So what kind of leadership qualities did you display at school?
During my time in Mopato, I was the vice head boy. I went from a prefect to a vice head boy. Then during my time at Clifton College, so Clifton, I was a new student, but within a week of me attending, I was nominated as a prefect. And then after prefect, I campaigned and ended up becoming the vice head boy as well. And then I was also captain of the school, my house team. We have these houses that we compete amongst ourselves as well, and I was the captain of that. And also just generally smaller things where you can really stand yourself out and shine, you know, like Interact Club. I'd always help as much as I can. We go campaigning outside.
Yeah.
I helped host the event. I was the MC. Just small things like that where you can really expose yourself and show people that you're able to take control or handle a situation.
Exactly.
Anything could do, really.
And Interact Club, for those who don't know what it is, please elaborate.
Interact Club, I think most schools in Francistown have one. It's basically a club where you fundraise through school activities or however the school manages to fundraise. You raise enough money and you go donate to disadvantaged communities throughout the country. Most schools have a system whereby they have a specific village that they support through their activities, but they will also donate to any other foundations, for example, blind, the deaf, anywhere that could really use aid. They're very generous, and it really cultivates a culture of taking care of your community.
That's awesome. I was part of the Interact Club as well in school. Just a side note.
Yeah.
We mostly fed the needy on weekends. On Saturdays, we'd go into Monarch and the likes.
That's really cool.
So that's interesting.
Yeah.
All right, and could you tell us a little bit about your preparation for the SATs? Because we know that you did Cambridge exams, which are UK-based exams, and you had to prepare for the SATs in order to apply to American universities.
Yeah.
Was that an easy process or a difficult one? And for those listening, what are the SATs? You know, is it math and English only? Is it many subjects? Is it MCQs? Is it written? Yeah.
So American universities, most of them used to require the SAT in order to apply, but after COVID, they realized it was not sustainable, so they made it an optional requirement. However, I decided to take them because I thought it would really boost my chances, because I wasn't sure of the understanding of the UK-based Cambridge A-levels, IGCSE. So I told myself, okay, I'll take the SATs and try to do that. The SATs, they used to be multiple subjects. However, more recently, it's now just been condensed to maths and English. It's a 3-hour or so multiple choice paper. When I did it at the time, it was a written exam. So we'd have to go to the Botswana Examination Council in Gaborone, sit down for around 3 hours and answer. It's all multiple choice questions. There are some sections in the math section only where you can write your own answer, but for the most part, 98% of it is just multiple choice questions. In terms of preparation, again, the internet really played a big part, because there's not really any resources in Africa, because that exam is not really related to any institutions we have here. So I had to use the internet, and I'd say the major resource that even the organization that runs the SATs promotes themselves, they have a partnership, is Khan Academy, where it'll give you short practice questions to see the style of the SAT, some videos to explain how questions should be answered, as well as full SAT papers like you can just answer in your computer. It'll give you a passage if you're doing English. You read the passage and then you give you questions and answer. It'll grade the questions for you. It'll explain any answers you might have got wrong. And it was like an extremely helpful resource. I think now it's a lot better because the SAT has since transitioned to a computer-based exam. So instead of writing everything on a sheet of paper, it's now still a multiple choice exam, but this time you get to do it on a computer. So it saves a lot of time, and I think it's generally a lot easier. Yeah.
Okay, and was it tricky preparing for your SATs while you were studying for your Cambridge exams, or was it not a difficult thing?
It was, again, really just about having really good time management. So I would make time closer towards I had the SAT exam. Before, like when I had a couple months before, I would just do it like once every couple of weeks because I was so busy with school. And then maybe like a month before the SAT exam, I'd make sure every day I practice the paper. But even if it really just comes to perfecting your testing strategy, because I actually had to take it twice. The first time I did okay, but it wasn't what I wanted. So I had to do it another time again to make sure I did get the result I wanted. So, but otherwise, yeah.
Okay, that's great. And was there any interviews that you had to undergo prior to getting admission into the various universities you applied for?
When it comes to American universities, especially the universities with lower admission rates, 9 times out of 10, if they're interested in you, they will ask you for an interview. So like for me, Princeton had asked me to attend an alumni interview. This is where an alumni from the school interviews you. So if you get an interview, I think it's a pretty good sign that the university is interested in you, but it is not necessary for your admission. So some schools might, but not all schools. So if you get one or if you don't get one, it isn't really a big deal. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I know your interview fell through, even though it was scheduled, but you still got admission.
Yeah, my interview, I don't know, he kind of ghosted me. So I just emailed the university. I told them, listen, my interviewer isn't responding, and they said, okay, it's okay. The time for interviews is already ended, but it's not a big factor in considering your application. And I ended up getting in anyway. So it's not a big determining factor. It just shows some interest in you as a student. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much for the information.
Okay.
I'm sure it will be very useful to our viewers. And again, we wish you all the best in your journey ahead. And we are so glad you could sit down with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.